All right. Once again, good afternoon. Jeff Benson coming to you from beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. Today, this is our ongoing webinar series on builder's risk. We do cover a lot of topics, but it always kind of comes back to builder's risk course of construction. So keep that in mind. What we're going to do is run through some of these things pretty quickly today, then we'll open it up for questions. As I was preparing this presentation for the day, I started thinking about it. And what I'm going to tie everything back to is real life examples of claims that I've been involved in. I've been doing builder's risk for many, many years, seen a lot of different types of claims. So I'm thinking to myself, I always ask myself from an underwriting perspective, if that risk was submitted to me today, would I write it again? If the question, if the answer is yes, then we move on. So I would say loss control, though, is I ask myself two questions. Could we have done something to prevent the loss, number one? Or number two, could we have done something to mitigate the loss, reduce the damage? And in most cases, you can do both those things, or you definitely can mitigate it, and many times you can eliminate it. And the way this is structured today, we're going to talk about it at a peril level. So I think it'll make sense as we get into it. So once again, we're talking about loss control, job site safety, things of that nature, very, very critical to builder's risk. And I think from an agent's perspective, this is going to make you add credibility with your insureds, both builders and developers, if you can give them these ideas, because nobody wants to have claims. It's not a good thing. So let's talk about fire. And fire for now, I'm going to look at that more as not a catastrophic event. We're not really talking about brush fire, more or less individual fires. It is the number one severity problem we have in builder's risk is, frame buildings burn down. And there's a lot of frame that we insure in builder's risk. So we're going to talk about some things we can do from a fire standpoint. So one thing that we always ask ourselves, and this is a little abstract, but does the builder know what they're doing? So the builder's building a $5 million building, and they've been building $5 million buildings for 20 years. It's the same type of building. Maybe it's a condo, maybe it's a office building, so they know what they're doing. So now we have a builder that's been building $200,000 houses and decides he's going to build a $5 million building. Well, we might have an issue with that because there's a little more exposure, little things are a little different on that job site. So let's ask that too. So in the larger the value, the larger the project, the more formal things need to be. We need to have something in place. And is there a designated safety manager? So I'm going to give you an example of one of our largest claims in the last 2 years was a building that we were insuring. It was a renovation. So we had the existing structure renovation, and the roofing contractor decided to heat up some glue with a metal halide light bulb. And they left the bulb on at night, as they left for the day, heated up the glue, started a fire. We had a $1 million claim. So how could we have prevented that? Not mitigated it, prevented it. What if we'd had a safety inspector that simply walked the job site at the end of the day and saw this high-powered light left on and unplugged it? There you go. $1 million claim averted. So keep in mind, that's how simple some of this stuff is. But that's why we ask the question, do people police the job site at the end of the day? It might be nice to know the local fire company, especially some of you do builds, they have stuff, you insure people that build stuff in protection class 9 and 10. So I think it does prevent, it does make sense for you to say, where is the nearest volunteer fire department? What is their response time? And where is the water supply? Do we have fire hydrants? Do we have a body of water we can extract water from and put it out? What do we do in the wintertime when the body of water we're going to extract is frozen? Well, logical questions, something you might want to think about before the fire starts. Once again, if it's off a little ways, how do you get to the job site? Let's say it's in the winter and now there's ice and snow and the 2-lane road leading to the job site is impassable. That prevents you from fighting the fire, so I want to think about that. We always ask this question about debris, but that goes back to almost every day, to policing the job site, keeping it relatively clear of debris. Obviously, that's a fire source. You just got to pick up all the stuff. You don't want to leave all the roofing materials laying around everywhere. And we'll talk a little bit, I think we'll save that, but we get into the cat events when the hurricane's coming, make sure everything's tied down. You don't have the generator attached to the crane flying around so it flies into the building, does damage, not good. So you got to tie everything down. And I'd almost say now in the tornado alley in the springtime, you got to be thinking, if the tornado comes, what can I do to mitigate the loss? Might not be able to prevent it, but I can mitigate it a little bit. Think about water damage. This is the #2 claim in builder's risk now throughout the United States, is water damage. One of the things we see a lot of is, and I had another one of these, and we had a 3-story building and the plumber was working on the 3rd floor and didn't tighten the valve down enough. He left on a Friday, so now you can guess what? Nobody checked on the project Friday night, Saturday, Sunday until Monday morning. They came in Monday morning and guess what? You have 3 floors flooded, all because nobody checked behind the plumber. Now, ultimately, is it the plumber's fault? Yes, but maybe the general contractor or the safety coordinator, maybe he had looked at the job site on Friday evening or even Saturday morning and said, oh, we have a leak, I better fix that. Could have mitigated that claim, right? Or avoided it altogether. On the catastrophic event, these are things we know of. If you're building in the Southeast on the coast, between June and October, there's a good chance that it'll be exposed to some type of tropical catastrophic event. So a lot of this is keeping the job site clean, making sure things are picked up. That's #1. And #2 is having a plan post-claim. How do we get things back in order as quickly as possible? So think about, like I said, now we have the tornadoes. They occur most of the year. They have increased in the Midwest. The old tornado alley has kind of grown. I've been seeing now carriers put wind deductibles on risk as far north as Minnesota. So it's not just Kansas and Oklahoma anymore. It's kind of grown. So we could talk about that, why that is, but it's just an experience that the insurance industry is having these days. Another thing I'll say too is, flood. I don't really cover flood as a peril. It's not covered on the main form, but if you live in an area that has potential to flood, I obviously as an agent, you better offer the flood. Now, if they don't take it, that's their choice. But we now are seeing flooding events in once in a 1,000-year floodplains. So you might want to look at that and just offer the coverage. Like I said, if they don't take it, that's on them, but at least you offered it to them. A lot of it is, on water damage too, is just preventing it, is mitigating it. So if the water comes, what do we do? Where do I go to get the sandbags? What can I do to get a sump pump? Maybe there's no power, so I have to have a generator to run the sump pump. These little things can save, thousands of dollars in claims. Simply moving things higher. That's why it's like, if you have a 10-story building, you really don't need flood coverage in all 10 stories if it's a masonry non-combustible building. So hopefully you can take all the delicate stuff and move it to a higher floor, and it should be safe from a flooding event. I will say, Jacksonville, we had a big event a couple years ago in downtown Jacksonville. We had a high-rise office building, and it was built years ago. It was a good building, built years ago, but they had taken all the electronics for the building and put it in the parking garage in the basement. So guess what? We had the once in 1,000-year flood, flooded the parking garage and destroyed all electronics. All the electrical systems for the entire building were down. Took 3 months to get the building back up and running. So might want to think about that as they design these buildings. Sometimes it's as simple as you've got a leak and the people that discover the leak don't know how to turn the water off. So if you don't know how to turn the water off, you got a problem, because the leak's going to get worse. So make sure you know where the shutoff valves are. Things like roof drains. Once again, maybe they build up with materials flying off the trees and debris from the construction site. So the drain doesn't work. We have a flooding event. From rainwater, we got a problem. Something as simple as leaving windows open or uncovered over the weekend when we have a big storm coming. You have water intrusion. You get water coming in through these openings. Very easy to prevent. Just take a few minutes. Another thing too is, if you do have water damage, what's the plan? How are we going to fix it? Do we have a restoration contractor on call? We know because a lot of times if they get in there and fix it quick, the claim is mitigated, a lot less than it would have been. This presentation is going to be on our website because I think it's a good source of materials in case you don't have to write it all down. So just to give you an idea, I think this is all very, very important things. Let's talk about windstorm a little bit. When I say that, let's think of a catastrophic event. We have a tropical storm coming. What do? You know, we have all these cranes and things like that. And remember last year we had the storm heading to Miami, and we had all these claims, all these cranes up there, and they were supposed to withstand Category 4 winds. Well, it got to Category 2, and the cranes were spinning around like circles. It really wasn't working like they thought. So it might be something you want to think about. You know, and a lot of it is tying everything down because you want to prevent stuff from flying around. And a lot of the debris that flies around in these events, maybe it doesn't even damage the building that we're insuring, but it damages the surrounding buildings. So sometimes if you have a construction project, you want to not only look at your project, but look at the guy that's building something next to you too. Because if he doesn't do his due diligence, then you got a problem. So I think that's something you at least want to look at. Once again, building codes, they're all different, but obviously you got to be very cognizant of that. A lot of times too, we get these winds get increased if there's a lot of buildings around it. So you got to think about that. I've seen a lot of times, this can actually help you if you're building near the coast and there is a wind block. So you have a building between you and the ocean. That usually helps. So you probably can convince the underwriter to give you a little credit on the rate because there's something blocking the wind a little bit. So it might help you negotiate on that. A lot of times too, that's a nice picture of roof damage because that's what you see a lot of in tropical events. So a lot of times if we're putting a new roof on, let's maybe not do it the day before the Category 4 hurricane is going to hit. Might not be good timing on that case. So what you want to do is try to get everything tied down, get everything roofed in. The roof actually provides some of the structure integrity. So you want to get this stuff done as quickly as you can, especially in the tropical seasons. We now have enough notice too, sometimes more notice. It gets a little conservative now these days, but you're going to know a week out if something's heading your way. So now that's the time you better really kick into gear and say, what can we do to mitigate these wind claims? Because you're going to have some damage. It's going to happen. So how do we mitigate that? And these are all simple things that we can do. And once again, it's just having a plan in place, you know, simply writing it down. And if you guys can do that and give that to your insureds, like I said, I think that adds a lot of credibility because none of us, including the carrier, the program manager, the agent, the insured, nobody really wants to have claims. Nobody benefits from that. So theft. See, we're kind of taking these things in the order of what affects the job site. So what can we do from a theft standpoint? So once again, you got to look at the basic security of the job site at night. You know, is it fenced in? Is it lighted? Is it monitored somehow? There is something called a safety warranty that some companies put on builder's risk policies. Don't see it as much anymore. You don't see it until the values get pretty high, you know, but they might mandate that you have to do some of these things. And it's a warranty, which means if you don't do them, there's no coverage. So just make sure if you are involved in those that you read them very carefully because they could take away coverage. But within those safeguard warranties, I think there's some things we can do to prevent some theft claims. So that's just important. We had a pretty big theft claim not too long ago, and it was an employee theft claim. So just to give you a little idea of the coverage form is we exclude coverage on the standard builder's risk policy for theft by employees. So it's like you might want to tell your contractors to keep a close eye on their own employees and the subcontractors that they use. This was a case where we had an employee that was stealing roofing materials, and he was doing it a little bit at a time over a long period of time. So once the theft was discovered, there was no coverage because it was employee theft. So just one of those things, keep a close look on your inventory. The closer you know of what's on the job site, the better off you're going to be. And vandalism, you know, so theft kind of goes hand in hand with vandalism. It seems as though job sites are a great place for kids to play. I can say when I was a kid, I used to have a lot of fun on job sites. but that's not good. I'm talking about the vandalism standpoint now, not only the potential for bodily injury, which doesn't matter to builder's risk, but you do have a lot of vandalism. So once again, maybe not leaving the job site unattended for long periods of time would be a good thing. We've seen subdivisions being built. Maybe they'll hire an off-duty policeman just to patrol the subdivision at night. That's a deterrent, things like that. You might want to think about that. You might want to actually talk to local law enforcement. Just tell them what's going on. If you have an issue, I would report it and say, you guys can help me out by keeping an eye on things. I know they'll do that. Think about controlling who has access to the job site. It should only be subcontractors that are working on the job site, and your employees. Other people should not have access to it. Another thing too, as simple as that, is, like I said, if you have neighboring projects or businesses, just little something like going to introducing yourself, saying, I'm, Mr. or Mrs. Builder, I'm building this project over here. I want to be a good neighbor while I'm building it. Keep an eye on things. I greatly appreciate it. You'd be amazed how much that helps. And don't have materials too much delivered at any one time. Use them. You want to get them delivered and installed as soon as possible. That would, mitigate the loss, I guess, is what I'm saying. Kind of an order of the nightmare of a property underwriter. Next is collapse. And I can honestly say the biggest problem I've seen in collapse claims is builders that don't know what they're doing. So we have a builder, maybe they're involved in a renovation project. So they have a house, they're going to build, they're going to redo it, they're taking it apart. They're saying, oh, we're not going to do any structural changes, but they get in there and there's wood rot, and they discover a load-bearing wall that needs work. And they're like, oh, that's not a big deal. I think I can do it, even though they've never done it. So next thing you know is they do some work on the load-bearing wall, and guess what happens? The whole thing collapses. Once you start doing work on load-bearing aspects of a building, the collapse coverage increases dramatically. You have to have contractors that know what they're doing. And I'll tell you some funny things. I had an agent the other day that said, he called me and he goes, I don't think it's a structural project. They're just lifting the house up and moving it down the block. So I had to kind of catch myself and say, I think that's structural. Just yesterday, I had agents say, well, they're going to put new wood, they're going to put new trusses in. So that's not structural, is it? I said, yeah, I'm afraid it is. Now, if they're just putting new shingles on a roof, that's not structural. If you're going to put new trusses up there, that's structural. Last week, a guy called and said, we're going to be adding an elevator. Is that structural? Yeah, I think an elevator is structural. It goes through structural areas of the place. So keep in mind, anything structural needs to be done by an experienced contractor. Once again, it just comes down to experience. That's the main thing. And the next thing is the description of the project. You need to get that from the insured, and if not, get it from the engineering report, just to get a good idea of actually what is the scope of the project. Are they undercurring the foundation? Are they doing underground work? We have row houses where they're doing underground work and then they collapse the row house next door. That happens. That's structural. Got to have people knowing what they're doing on these things. So now we ran through, those are the major claims of things that could happen to a job site. We probably covered 95% of things that happen. There's always a few weird ones, but those are the ones that are going to happen. So now we've had the claim. Now is the time. What are we going to do? So you got to start thinking about, what do I do once I have a claim? So hopefully you've reviewed the policy before the claim. Sometimes you do after the claim. So you got to have the policy, access to the policy. The sooner you do it, inspect the damage, take pictures. It's so easy to take pictures now. Take your own pictures. I highly advise that. And once again, contact your insurance carrier as quickly as possible. Get the claims adjuster out there as quickly as possible. And then you want to start fixing things up. So how are you going to do that? You should have some contractors lined up that can help you, knowing that this claim is going to happen. So especially after a catastrophic event, think about that. Windstorms come through, now you want to get back up and running as quickly as possible, but the contractors are spread all over the place. So you should have a plan in place. So that was kind of it in a nutshell. Loss control, things we can do to prevent claims and mitigate claims. I think this makes us all better, so hopefully you got something out of this. And what I'm going to do now is open it up to questions. If you have any questions at all, now's the time to ask.
All right, Jeff, it looks like your presentation was so informative that there are no questions as of yet.
Okay, I like that. So this is a great resource material for you guys. It's going to be out on the website for you. I would, watch it again. I'd print it off because I just think it's good things to have. And it's really an added, it's an added service that you as an agent can provide to your insureds. And I'm here to help any way I can too. I feel that's a big part of what my job is. So I'm glad I shocked you all today, and you guys are in good, ready to roll now. I will say this, I want to give a little plug for our ongoing series of webinars. Next month, we're going to do another one. And this one's going to be very product specific. We haven't done one of those in a while. So we're going to dissect our policy. We think it's one of, if not the best in the marketplace, and we know what we're doing. But so stay tuned for that. You'll all be invited. I do greatly appreciate you taking time this afternoon to listen to the story. And like I said, we're getting maybe a little more product specific. And if you have any topics that you think we should cover, we'd love to hear from you. So it's easy to let us know what's going on. So stay tuned for that. And just wanted to show you, here we are. That's me, Jeff Benson, Donna Berry, my senior underwriter down here in Jacksonville. We have other people, team of people down here for you. If you have any questions or concerns at any time, pick up the phone and call me, send me an email, text me. I'm here for you. So everybody have a great day. And
actually, Jeff, we now have a couple questions.
Good. I shamed them into asking. I like that.
All right. Here's some last minute questions. What are your wind guidelines for Miami Beach, new construction concrete 3-story school?
How come somebody from Miami always asks me about wind? Kind of funny how that works. So yeah, we have several down there, but the bottom line is we do write business in Miami-Dade and Broward and Palm Beach. We have, maybe not right on the water. We run, asked the question, it was within 1,000 feet of the coast. We might not write the wind if it's all over the wind pool, but we do write it down there, and we do like masonry non-combustible fire resistant buildings. And I will give the guys down in South Florida a plug. They're building stuff better all the time. So, it's kind of interesting, I go other places and they're still building a lot of stuff out of frame, but not down in South Florida. It's at least joisted masonry, and many times it's M&C. I had a single family dwelling the other day that was true masonry non-combustible in Miami. Walls were like 1.5 feet thick, concrete reinforced metal, and even the roof was concrete and metal. So we like those buildings, and we'll definitely take a look at what you got down there.
Okay, and do you offer premise liability?
We do not. We are a monoline inland marine builder's risk program. So we do not write anything other than the builder's risk. But I will say our guidelines are very broad. So we like residential, we like commercial, we like new construction, we like remodeling renovations, and we will entertain older buildings. There's a lot of things that we'll do for you. So any type of builder's risk or installation coverage that you need, think about us.
Okay, and what is your max value for larger frame construction?
For most of the country, our limit is $5 million in frame. If it's inland and it's certain occupancies, which I won't list them all, but assisted living, hotels, we can go to 8 million. But an easy rule of thumb is 5 million for most things. And then inland areas of the country, we can go to 8 million. Good question. 25 million on any other construction classification. So from joisted masonry to fire resisted, we can go to 25 million.
All right, it looks like that was all of our last minute questions.
Very good. Well, once again, thank you for your time today, and let's all be safe out there. Now we all know how to make things safe, and have a great day.